organisation called Schools Against the Bomb. We made the programme you're about to see because we believe that unless we get rid of nuclear weapons in this country as a start to world disarmament, that we're all going to be killed in a nuclear war. Watch it and see what you think.
Tenths of a millisecond after the explosion, and at a distance of 60 miles, the light from the fireball of a single megaton thermonuclear device is 30 times brighter than the midday sun. This little boy has received severe retinal burns from an explosion 27 miles away. Wave from a thermonuclear explosion has been likened to an enormous door slamming in the depths of hell.
After a nuclear war, the whole of Europe could become a vast uninhabitable desert. No industrial society, nothing that we recognise as government would survive. There would be total anarchy, where all those who remained alive would be prey to bands of savage marauders, with disease rampant and violent death commonplace. In an all-out nuclear war, to use the word survival is idiotic. The words of General Sir John Hackett, former Commander-in-Chief of NATO's Northern Army Group. The possibility of a nightmare like this began in 1945 when the Americans dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Since then, the number of countries with these horrific weapons has grown. In 1949, the Soviet Union exploded a nuclear device. In 1952, Britain, cut off from American expertise, developed her own bomb. In 1960, France joined the nuclear club. In 1964, China became its fifth member. 1974, a nuclear explosion in India. A peaceful explosion, they said. And the list just goes on growing.
I think we have to assume for this discussion that Israel already is, in effect, a nuclear weapon state. I think we have to assume that India already is effectively a nuclear weapon state. Both countries can acquire them very quickly. That means that Pakistan feels impelled towards becoming a nuclear weapon state, and probably now you will not stop it.
You will certainly have Argentina, which is very advanced in nuclear technology. Brazil will get there very soon as well. In Africa, you have also South Africa, obviously. In the future, you will have other black African states.
Then there's the problem of Iraq, which has hitherto had a lot of money. The French have been closely involved with them. They want their oil, and they have been supplying research reactors. Then there is the problem of South Korea.
Maybe tomorrow Egypt, why not? They have had reactor technology for a long time. Libya, which is not so endowed in scientists, but can buy scientists and has the fissile material and the reactors.
Well, I think by the end of the century you could have 20 nuclear weapon states, and therefore the chances of an accident are very much greater. And it could well be that we will have a nuclear disaster.
It's always been a thing that I've always been frightened of, a big threat. Everyone's always heard of nuclear war. They say if you don't have the bomb, you're going to be invaded. If you do have it, then you're safe. But I don't feel comfortable sitting on top of this time switch that you feel is going to blow up. I mean, you hear about things every day on the news that make you think even more. It's coming. The war's coming. Well, I suppose I'm afraid of the same things that everyone else is scared of. If a bomb drops on you, there'll be nothing left. Or if you do survive by some chance, and then when you come out of the shelter or whatever, and you see all these people totally annihilated or with terrible mutilations, I mean, what kind of life would it be? I feel angry sometimes when you think all these people are up in high ranks of power and everything. They can take all these decisions that will affect your own life, and you haven't got a single say in it at all.
Nuclear weapons are a real threat. They're a threat to civilization and to all life, not just humans. They threaten to destroy animals, plants, everything on Earth is threatened by nuclear weapons. I think it's more worrying for young people because they've got a longer life ahead of them to protect. We've all got to die, but I'd rather die of old age in my bed than any minute now. There's a lot of people who say, oh, there's nothing to be worried about, they'll never go off. I think they should sit up and pay attention to the way politicians are going on. I think they ought to be worried.
The danger of us all being blown off the face of the earth is very real and grows greater all the time. As politicians argue, international tension rises. Africa, Asia, South America, the Middle East. In all parts of the world, there are countries with nuclear weapons and leaders who would use them if they felt threatened enough. But nowhere is the tension more obvious than between the two superpowers.
I know I don't understand. You ask, you know I don't mind feeling. When my knees hurt, I like to stand.
Since 1949, fear of a nuclear war has taken them to the negotiating table to try to reduce their nuclear arsenals. But fear of each other has driven them home again to make bigger and better weapons of destruction. Such is the nature of nuclear deterrence. So far, the only result of these disarmament talks is to lock the East and the West into a contest that could finish us all, the arms race.
If one side develop a very accurate missile, they are pretty sure that the other side, sooner or later, and probably sooner, is going to develop an equally accurate missile. So they start asking themselves the question, what threat does such an accurate missile pose to us? How do we protect our missiles from it? In which case, they start building stronger missile silos, better missile defences, whatever it might be. And then they start thinking, now, suppose the other side builds better missile defences, we better build a yet more accurate, yet more powerful missile to get at them. And so the whole thing goes round and round, spiralling upward, escalating upward.
Far from being a deterrent to nuclear war, the more accurate and powerful those missiles become, then the closer the fingers go to the trigger.
One side's missiles is capable of hitting the other side's missile bases very, very accurately, and so destroying those missiles. Let's look at the implications of that. Suddenly war breaks out, and you're keeping a watch for my missiles coming toward you. But you know that I possess missiles that are accurate enough to hit your missiles. And what's going to happen is that you'll be much more inclined to fire your missiles off rapidly, because you'll be frightened that I could destroy your missiles before you had a chance to fire them.
The West's latest contribution to weapons accuracy and power is the cruise missile, capable of striking within 50 yards of whatever it's aimed at. It is a direct threat to Soviet weapons. If a war breaks out, wherever it's kept becomes a target for the Russian equivalent, the SS-20. Last year, our government decided to allow the cruise missile to be stationed here. They claim it is this country's duty to our allies in NATO. By the beginning of 1983, we will have these weapons on standby in US air bases throughout Britain. But it is the Americans alone who will make the decision if and when they're to be fired. Mrs. Thatcher's administration also gave the go-ahead for millions of pounds to be spent on our own advanced nuclear weapons system, the Trident. Decisions like these only make the tension between the East and the West worse. If the pressures ever became too much for the politicians to handle, it isn't going to be in New York and Moscow that the war breaks out. It's going to be here in Europe. Along the West German border, NATO's forces are constantly on the alert for a Soviet tank advance.
A nuclear war could arise in the first place from a Soviet attack on Western Europe. And indeed, NATO defences quite deliberately have this nuclear risk built in as part of the deterrent. It is made clear to the Soviet Union that we cannot defend ourselves for very long without initiating the use of nuclear weapons, initially, hopefully on a small and local scale, but with every possibility that this would escalate to ultimately a major nuclear exchange in which the territory of the Soviet Union itself should be at risk. Well, this is quite deliberate. It is part of the deterrent posture.
If NATO fires any nuclear weapon, however small, then the Russians are almost certain to respond with nuclear weapons, because their nuclear weapons, by and large, are rather vulnerable, and therefore have to be used very early on in a nuclear or even conventional war. And therefore the risk of escalation is enormous, I would say inevitable, and the escalation will be very rapid. And this would certainly lead to the total destruction of both sides.
I am angry about the way our lives are being played with. I think I've got the right to choose my own future, not let other people choose it for me. Because the government thinks that lives like mine are expendable. They're just writing me off, and thousands of people like me, they're just writing us off as hopeless cases in the event of a nuclear war. And that's not right.
If there is a nuclear attack on this country, the only people certain of a life afterwards are the select few chosen by the government to go into the safety of deep underground bunkers. From here, people like Keith Bridge, Chief Executive of the Humberside County Council, will attempt to run the country when the attack is over. To make sure that everything will run smoothly, they have practice wars like this regularly.
But these, as far as ordinary, it's very clear.
How much power do you have as controller?
As soon as the bomb goes off, total power, theoretically.
That would include power over the police, fire brigade, all that sort of thing?
Yes. And life and death.
Powers of life and death?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That if people were looting, it would be within my competence to instruct that they be executed.
Do you expect that kind of situation to arise?
It's quite possible. It's feasible.
Does having that kind of power, total power, worry you?
No.
Not at all?
No.
At the moment. It's pretty conclusive about the whole time being a ground burst, Mr. Controller, because outside, I'm sad to say, gentlemen, but all our cars are a charcoal brown colour, and all our windscreens are gone, and the adjacent housing around the station is on fire. There's a multitude of trees that have been demolished, so we're positive it's a ground burst weapon of 1 megaton size. So there's extreme damage outside of this control station. So this will explain why we felt the station shake at the time of the explosion.
And this would mean that there's very little that one can do for Hull or its residents. No.
While Mr. Bridge and his cronies are safe underground, the only help the rest of us will get is advice on how to survive the attack by hiding under the kitchen table, given in this ridiculous booklet. It'll be handed out free when the government think war is imminent. They expect about 3 weeks' warning. Unfortunately, Her Majesty's Stationery Office say it will take them at least 4 weeks just to print enough to go round. Still, there's always the commercials.
When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once. Do not stay out of doors. If you are caught in the open, lie down.
Looks pretty straightforward, really, doesn't it? Although some people think it'd be a bit messier than this. Last year, the military carried out an exercise simulating a nuclear attack on Britain called Operation Square Leg. A group of scientists and a doctor, working independently, looked at the effects of 5 bombs that were supposed to have dropped on London. We asked Dr. Andrew Haynes what would have happened to the city's population if this had been a real attack.
Yeah, I would estimate that over 1 million people would be killed from the blast effects alone. That's immediate casualties. And then about 2.5 to 3 million people would be injured from the blast effects of the weapons. In addition to that, it's difficult to calculate exactly, but large numbers of people would be severely burnt by the flash of the explosion. Burns patients need to have the fluid that they lose from the burnt skin replaced, otherwise they will die from the lack of fluid. They also need very intensive nursing care, and they often need antibiotics and special techniques to prevent them getting infected. And of course eventually they need very extensive skin grafting. And in the whole of the UK there are about 120 beds in burns units. And when you compare this with the number of likely burns cases, say for the case of London, upwards of 500,000, it's quite conceivable there could be this kind of number. You can see that really medical services wouldn't be able to make any impact on the situation.
Can you imagine 500,000 people suffering like this, and millions more all around the country?
Many people are likely to be left to suffer for days and possibly weeks without any treatment. The complete overwhelming nature of the disaster will be something which we have really no experience of, and I think that doctors would probably be affected as other people are. And I think this would really get in the way of their ability to function as doctors. Some, of course, may be able to, but even those will be hampered by lack of supplies. The other thing is fallout, which is going to cause tremendous disruption because it's going to be difficult to measure it accurately. So sometimes we won't know whether they're in a high fallout area. And it's quite conceivable that many people will be trapped in high fallout for days and possibly even weeks.
There are a few words of advice for us about that too. In between making commercials, the officials have worked out how much protection we will have from fallout.
The most widespread danger from nuclear explosions is fallout. Fallout is dust that is sucked up from the ground by the explosion. Fallout can kill. Since it can be carried for great distances by the winds, it can eventually settle anywhere. So no place in the United Kingdom is safer than any other.
Dr. Philip Webber, one of the physicists who studied the attack on London.
The Home Office do some calculations on how protective your house, say, would be against radiation. But they assume that this house has all its windows and that the roof is undamaged. Well, if you take, say, a city such as London after a nuclear attack, the windows are all going to be smashed and the roof's going to be damaged, and there's no way you can get up on the roof or fix your windows before the radiation comes down, because it's going to come down in a few minutes. So that calculation's wrong for that reason. It's also wrong because they take the average thickness of the roof and walls, and they don't allow for the fact that a normal roof or a wall has some holes in it or some areas which are thinner. And obviously where it's thinner, all the radiation is going to come through there. And there's a third reason. If you take a given material, it stops a certain amount of certain sort of radiation. They've even overestimated how much radiation given materials will stop.
The risk is as great in the countryside as in the towns. Nobody can tell where the safest place will be. So you are just as safe in your own home area as anywhere else. In fact, you are far better off at home because it is the place you...
It seems our homes and makeshift shelters are not going to give us much protection from radiation. So what effect will it have on us?
The exact symptoms depend upon the amount of radiation that you receive. But so the majority of people who received a large dose would get nauseated, they'd feel sick, and many of them would vomit. And a proportion of them would get diarrhea. Later on, the more obvious signs would appear. The bone marrow, which produces the red and white blood cells, would be stopped from working. And this means that the white cells which fight off infection would fall in the blood, and people would possibly be more susceptible to infections. And the cells that stop bleeding, allow blood to clot, would also be damaged, so that people would start to bleed in their skin, in their gums, from other parts of the body. And so they would die gradually over a few weeks.
Meanwhile, back at the bunker, all is well. Keith Bridge is preparing to make an announcement on the wartime broadcasting service. To those of us still left alive.
Are we ready? This is the County Controller for Humberside, Keith Bridge. I'm speaking from the county's main headquarters at Bourne. This is an official broadcast, and I will be telling you what you must do in the days ahead. Among the many dangers now facing us are rumour and panic. We can and we will survive.
Advice will be given to you on the radio, so keep listening. This advice over the radio and other instructions and news will be very important to you while you're cut off from the people living around you.
It's only necessary to have one high-altitude nuclear explosion, and that would generate something called the electromagnetic pulse, which is a very sharply rising pulse of radio waves. It's 100 times faster than lightning, and it can damage electronic circuits, it can damage computers, integrated circuits, by generating big voltages in them, which means that they're effectively made inoperative, so they just won't work. And the only way you could fix that sort of apparatus would be by replacing the components. So if you had a transistor radio, for example, which you were expecting to get messages from the government on, that if that sort of explosion had occurred, and there's no good reason to suppose it wouldn't, then your transistor might not work.
Even if a few radios do still work, will anyone be in a fit state to follow the instructions they're given?
The long-term psychological effects would, in those people who did survive, would be very severe as well. We know from follow-ups of people in disasters and follow-ups of those people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki that the mental scars lasted a long, long time. I think they could impair the chances of restarting any kind of society. Then there are the other infectious problems which could occur in a post-attack situation, because try and envisage a situation in which all the amenities of modern civilization just wouldn't be available. I mean, there wouldn't be any proper sewerage, there wouldn't be a proper water supply. People would often be crowded together in inadequate shelters. So that infectious diseases could kind of rip through the survivors just like wildfire. Diseases such as hepatitis, tuberculosis, perhaps measles, could kill large numbers of people.
Millions already dead. Millions more dying slowly. If things don't change, this could be you and me. In the last 36 years, talking has got us nowhere. If we don't do something now, it could be too late. 2 years ago, Schools Against the Bomb was formed to help campaign against nuclear arms in Britain. Giles Perrott is now the main organiser, working with over 300 member groups in schools around the country.
I would like to see Britain setting a precedent by dispensing with its nuclear weapons on its own and hopefully setting some sort of a precedent for that to happen in other countries. I don't feel for one moment that Russia or America will feel obliged to disarm themselves just because Britain does. But I do feel it will be the first piece of action for 36 years where instead of just talking about disarmament, one country actually decides, right, we're going to back up what we say and we're going to get rid of all our nuclear weapons. My main aim for Schools Against the Bomb is that it will enable students in every school in Britain, and hopefully abroad as well, to know the facts about nuclear weapons, know about their effects, know about how many there are at the moment, and know about the political issues behind them, and realise that in fact they are an extremely risky form of defence, and realise that they are a very big problem that faces mankind now.
To achieve this, Schools Against the Bomb campaign in the press, go on demonstrations and organise debates in schools around the country.
It's definitely true now that I think students, young people, are a lot more worried about the risks of nuclear weapons, especially looking at what the world leaders have been doing recently.
Do you really feel that by getting unilateral disarmament you're going to get multilateral disarmament?
I do think at the moment that if Britain unilaterally disarmed, it would provide a very important loosening of the power blocks. I feel that the mistrust is so great that while people are negotiating for peace, 4 new nuclear warheads are being added to the world arsenal every day, that some sort of gesture has to be made, and I think that Britain is in an extremely important and unique position to make that gesture, in that it is of great strategic importance to America. At the moment it is the most heavily armed per square mile country in the whole world in nuclear weapons, and it can maintain its national security in a conventional form, and this is a widely held belief by military authorities. And so I feel it would be an extremely important gesture, and probably the only way that some action could replace the many, many words that have been given to nuclear disarmament over the last 36 years, which have resulted in absolutely no reduction in world nuclear weapons in any form at all. So in that way it's an extremely important step.
Well, I think that to help stop the nuclear weapons, it's important that you join an organisation such as Schools Against the Bomb or Youth CND. I think people as individuals are powerless, but when they join together as a mass, then they have a lot of power. I haven't got any say in anything really. I can't vote. I can't really do anything about it except protest, demonstrate. And I'm just going to go on and on and on until people in power start paying attention to me and others like me, because I'm not alone. I mean, there's thousands of people who are campaigning now, and the government can't just turn a blind eye forever.
A world without atomic weapons is the only sure way of preventing the final Holocaust. We believe that a nuclear-free Britain is the first step towards a nuclear-free future, and it is only with the help of people like you that this will ever happen. If you want to join the campaign, write to us at the address that will be given at the end of this programme. Protest and survive.